This is kind of interesting. Okay, according to this, I am live, which is a little annoying because some things are behaving slightly different because in YouTube. Ignore that noise in the background. So I'm going to jump to Discord real quick and post this and then just get to work. Okay, that's what we're going to do. Open Discord. Excuse me, friends. Hopefully people will be able to find this live stream. And boom, there it is. Okay, cool. All right, so what are we doing today? Honestly, we're just charging forward, so let's go. All right, the other day we did this
Buckle.
bit.
Well, somebody's got their tights in a tizzy.
So that's what we animated.
Besides Lady Carliana. But oh, sure, I get it. Unload on the help. I may have been a tad harsh. It's...
Okay, so let's jump back to Tahoma 2D. And for those who've been with me for a while and you're wondering why am I using Tahoma 2D instead of Krita, and the answer is no reason in particular. I was kind of laid off a bit from animation for a short time, and when I came back to it, I'm like, you know, Tahoma's just kind of like feeling interesting. So, you know, I use the two softwares pretty interchangeably. Bottom line story for those who are keeping score is Tahoma's stronger on things like the skeleton tool and rigging, and probably arguably a little more stable broadly. And Krita's stronger on paint and of course the liquify tool, which I use all the time. So I'm going to do a quick check on my YouTube channel to see if this... It looks to me like we are live. So if there's anybody watching, pipe in, would you? Let me know you're here, because there were some strange things going on with setting up the live stream on YouTube. It's probably my own fault because I started OBS live streaming before I set up the actual live stream on YouTube. So it caused things to unfold in a way that was a little unusual to what I'm used to, and because I'm in a creative mode to get busy on animation, I don't want to like get distracted with trying to solve technical problems. So it's just like, okay, let's forge ahead with you know, the work. So in this case, the whole point of this this scene will really be to fiddle around with the acting. So Golik has a couple lines here.
Unload on the help.
Right here.
I may have been a tad harsh. It's been a trying day.
Oh, I bet.
Oh, I bet.
Okay, so that's really what this session is about. It's about saying, okay, let's take Golik's line of dialogue where he says, I may have been a bit harsh, and see what we might want to do with it in terms of acting. So this is an animation exercise. Let's save our work. This would be shot number 3-28, I believe. So actually, let's do this. Let's go to our output settings first. Yeah, I need to change these defaults, that's for sure. So this is going to be 0328. And this is going to be, oh my gosh, by golly, scenes. Let's choose scenes. Okay, so then we got scenes. And then we got to do a couple little bits of housekeeping. Episode. I got to double check the folder. Hey, Chizyapo. Good afternoon. How are I doing? Just fine. It's a beautiful day. And I'm looking forward to just cranking away at some, as I said, animation from the standpoint of just playing around with the acting. Okay, so it's episode -03. Let's choose that folder. And I must admit, Tahoma seems to be moving a little slowly. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut and paste this. Alright. Oh, come on now, please. Alright. So I'm going to hit a plus, scenes, episode 3, and then if I put in the rest, which would be 03-28, and then a slash, then when it comes time to render, Tahoma will actually create the necessary folders. Now, why? Okay, save scene. Yeah, okay. This is a little bit of a nuance between Krita and Tahoma, because with Tahoma, normally the TNZ files, the actual project files for the scenes, is in the scenes folder, whereas with Krita, it's in the episode 3 subfolder. So the actual Krita file is kept in with the scenes folder, whereas in Tahoma, typically it's not. So that's just a little nuance for those who are interested. And now it's going to render. Basically nothing's been drawn yet, so there's really nothing to render. Okay, so now let's finally get to work. I am going to actually let's take Raja out of this and just put him here on a separate layer. So we're basically using the rule of thirds to position these guys somewhat aesthetically within the scene. And okay, so his ear appears there. This is a little off. Okay, cool. So that gets us started, and actually his headdress is a little taller. So yeah, we don't know how long this session will go today. I'm basically going to just kind of work on this until I feel like moving on to something else. So, for any friends who have not checked out my TikTok, please do. It's not about animation. It's about emotional health and occasionally drifting into reasons why I no longer identify as a Christian, which is was kind of the topic today. I was looking at a book called The Origins of Life by Hugh Ross and one other guy, and let's just say that the author's biases were being worn pretty explicitly on their sleeve from the get-go. But to be fair, the book actually covers a lot of scientific topics quite nicely. So I do intend to read the book, despite the fact that, as I say, the authors kind of revealed their agenda on page, well, in the foreword. Actually, you didn't even have to get into the chapter 1 before it's like, okay. Yeah, and I won't recap that here. But if you're interested, it's only a 3-minute video, because that's what I do on TikTok. I do short videos. Like, I mean, you probably know that that's what most people do on TikTok, because that's mainly what TikTok encourages. And I've come to love TikTok as a platform. I really do. Okay, so now just to be, I'm going to go ahead and put this in blue just to remind myself that it's on a different layer. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're saying, what do we want to do with this line?
I may have been a tad harsh. It's been a trying day.
Okay, and for my purposes, I am going to keep this. Let's see, what do I want? Actually, I think I want the storyboard, so I'm going to keep this shot on the screen over on my upper left screen, so I can kind of remember what the staging was to start with. Okay, I just drew a line that I didn't mean to draw, and then I hit Z for undo, and it moved the line, which is bizarre. Sometimes there are bugs. All right, so shift space bar to zoom in. Okay, so in the initial framing, Golek is essentially looking up. His head is tilted up. Okay, and by the way, as long as I'm thinking about it, I should probably show you my latest paintings. So this actually got touched up and turned into this yesterday, which I was pretty proud of. My mother encouraged me to focus on composition a lot, and I have been doing just that, and it really seems to be helping the work. What was the other one? I did this one a couple days ago. So there's Indiana Jones, bombing at the box office at the moment, but still obviously an icon of American cinema. And then actually I'm kind of entertaining the idea of creating a series of these watercolors. 1, 2, 3. Interesting, huh? So it's a lot of fun. I love it. I get tremendous enjoyment lately out of painting. However, just drawing and doing animation is fun too, and I am like the luckiest guy in the world in that I have the freedom and ability to be able to do this kind of cool stuff that I enjoy. I mean, I think most people kind of can if they're really determined to, but at the same time, I don't want to minimize the difficulties that people have in life that seem to create barriers that can be quite disempowering, let us say. Okay. Always flip your canvas, friends. Flip, 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 flip. If you flip your canvas, it's like, there's one thing in painting, actually, in doing like wildlife painting and stuff, that I probably should just get a mirror, because especially when you're doing portraiture, when you're trying to do a likeness. Well, actually, speaking of which, I tell you the truth, I post this on my Facebook page. But, and by the way, here's another one I actually did a couple days ago. I guess that's pretty big. You know, that's actually oil on paper. So I've been trying a lot of weird techniques. Oil paint that's water mixable oil paint. But what I was going to say is, this drawing, I mean, look at the original drawing. It's got some problems. The painting was an improvement, but the thing that I wanted to note that's really important about this, and you may not think it's necessarily even that great. Hey, Nolavel. But I want to say, by way of encouragement to you guys, this drawing, to get the likeness to start to pop, where it's like, oh, I'm finally seeing Harrison Ford. I still think the eyes aren't quite right, okay? It's really hard. But I had to redraw this at least half a dozen times, where huge swaths of the drawing got erased, and I was just determined that I will not stop until I'm starting to see, you know, the likeness come through. And so it isn't talent. I am not talented. I mean, hell, guys, I made 5 complete 90-minute motion pictures before I made one that was even modestly successful. 5 movies I made before I made Healed by Grace, which was the one that was, you know, a pretty decent, modest success. So, it ain't talent, folks, it's tenacity. I'm not saying talent's not there, but actually this is going to be a little tricky. We've got to get his eye direction correct. Now we got to give him all his wrinkles, because Golek is actually a fairly elderly gentleman. So, anyway, thanks Nolavel for the positive comment on the whole painting thing. And I guess that's for people that watch my channel that are into not necessarily just animation, but also, you know, art, self-expression, and whatnot. I have to say, it has been quite useful recently to basically do at least one painting every single day. And things seem to be improving. I mean, the eagle, for example. Where the hell is the eagle? There it is. This one was a half an hour from start to finish. And that's basically watercolor along with some oil paint on paper. You know, so not that speed is necessarily always the goal, but, you know, all of these things, you know, the repetition of it has been quite useful. Okay, so let's flip again. So I would encourage anyone to do it. And if you're just working digitally, obviously your materials are cheap to free, you know. And when you do a painting every single day, you will start to see some improvement. And I think in the age of AI, my opinion about AI is that it's simply creating more value for original works of art, you know? So I'm not crying about your Mid-Journeys and your Dalis. They're quite useful tools. But I think original art has not seen its day. In fact, it may be experiencing a resurgence. Okay, so actually, so we got 4 people here. Let's talk, friends. One thing I'm curious about. I would like to get your take on the culture wars. Did you make those 5 feature films on your own? Yeah. Every movie I made, I can tell you that every movie I made, of which there were 8, I wrote, directed, in many cases acted in, edited, wrote all the musical score, everything. The only thing I didn't do was play all the roles, which I kind of can do with the cartoon, which is kind of cool, other than when I have my daughter or Maria voice a couple of the female characters. But yeah, and each film cost about the same to make. They all cost about $8,000 to make. And the only reason they cost that was because I was determined to pay my actors. Didn't pay them that well, frankly, about $20 an hour. But in the climate of the time, for actors to be paid at all was unusual, actually. And they didn't expect it either. You know, they really didn't. But that was just something that I felt like seemed like the right thing to do at the time, you know. But yeah, filmmaking, it's basically been there, done that, so I'm not that interested in it these days, although that could change. Let me bop back to what I was going to ask, though. Okay, so my partner Valerie and I, we see, let me give a little backdrop to this as I draw. Okay, I really didn't know diddly squat about TikTok until about a month or so ago, like maybe 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. I have not been involved with TikTok at all for very long. The only thing I had to compare it with was YouTube Shorts, and to me, at a glance, they looked the same. However, over time, and by becoming a creator on TikTok myself, just for the fun of it, really, because it gave me a platform in which to focus on something that's important to me that has nothing to do with animation, okay? But what I find, I'm curious if your read on TikTok as a social platform movement is the same as mine, or if you have a different read on it. To me, number one, in my experience, and some people may have a different experience, but in my experience, we don't see content on TikTok that is curated in the sense that it is as carefully packaged in order to satisfy the demands, if you will, of the algorithm or the platform. It seems to be more seat of the pants content from regular people, and who in a lot of cases these days are doing copious research about things that are happening in the culture, legislatively, judicially. My particular arena has to do mostly with matters of emotional health, how to be a person who is comfortable, you know, in your own skin, being who you are. I won't get into it today, but you know, the extent of my deficiencies that I've identified are, there's a plethora of them. And it's part of the reason why I sort of disappeared from live streaming. But my feeling on TikTok is it's an amazing resource. I think that the repost capability means that if I appreciate someone's content, all I have to do is click repost, and I'm able to help them succeed in getting their message out. And the stitch functionality, by contrast, makes it stupidly easy for bad information to be debunked. So from my perspective, what I've seen on TikTok, the fears that this could be some sort of platform for misinformation are comically ridiculous compared to Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. As far as I can see, in terms of objectivity and being able to needle into good information and reject bad information, I think it appears to me to be vastly superior. And my sense is that, you know, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but my sense is that that's why Meta wanted desperately to get rid of TikTok, was because they're just doing a damn better job and stealing market share. Now, at this point in history, TikTok is still something like number 9 or something, you know, way behind Facebook and Twitter, all the likely suspects. So it's not as if it's an actual threat, right, to those platforms. But the trending in the short term would suggest that it is, because of the change that's happening and how quickly. Hey Maria, good to see you. Working remote today so you can be in and out of the stream. Nice. Haven't heard from you in a while. I can tell you, you know, you're famous. I mean, Salt and Light's pretty much out everywhere now, and based on the timetable, because I got the stuff was all delivered almost 9 months ago. So hopefully somewhere around the top of August, about a month from now, I'll have a beat on if the darn thing is, earning the way it really needs to. Okay, so what does Golik say? I'm going to go ahead and create a loop on his dialogue.
I may have been a tad harsh.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to say is I like his expression right here. And again, let's flip the canvas so that we're... Yeah, there's still flaws. This is an amazing thing that is a little frustrating, actually, is that no matter how good of a job I do of drawing, and this has been true with my paintings as well, no matter how good of a job I do, I always come back the next day. And by the way, that's very sweet, Maria. All those little loving hearts. I love it. I'm so popular. I am loved. Anyway, no matter what, I come back and find shit that needs to be fixed. It's like I said about painting, man. It is not talent. It's not talent. It's tenacity, and tenacity is a choice. You know, and I say that by way of encouragement to all you guys that are trying to improve your own creative work. You know, I'm a big believer in this, and I'm proud that this is what I've taught my son, is that in most endeavors in life, while there are barriers, there's horrible barriers that exist in our culture. Misogyny, racism, patriarchy, that's baked deeply into the core of how we think, how every moment of every day is corrupted to a degree by these sorts of forces that just affect our thinking. Okay, you don't have to obviously be a victim of these types of social ills, or participate in them, I should say. But yet, in America, we're building to an amazing stress point. You know, we are in a pivoting mode right now that I have never seen in my lifetime, and most resembles to me what you kind of saw in the Summer of Love, in 1968 type of time. The difference today is TikTok and platforms like TikTok, platforms like this one. The difference is that to the hoi polloi that are waking up and going, wait a second, this 40, 50 years of the story you've told us about trickle-down economics, it turns out not only does it not work, but we've got enough history behind us to know very specifically what goes wrong. I've probably explained this here before. So, but for the people that aren't familiar, quick summary, I'll try to do it in 20 seconds. Old books like Adam Smith's books on economics suggest that the hidden hand of economic development would always suggest that when you deregulate and therefore ostensibly get the government out of the way to open up the marketplace to competition, then what you have is this healthy propagation of competitors, which drives quality up and prices down. In practice, what actually happens, and literally happens all the time, and I could name half a dozen industries where this has been proven to be true, is that what actually happens when you deregulate is oligarchy. The two biggest fish in the pond swim in and gobble up all the competition or buy up all the competition. That's what actually happens. Now, is that necessarily a bad thing? I don't know. We can withhold judgment, and that's why we don't want to speak only in generalities when we critique the culture. We want to think in specifics and talk in specifics, meaning, okay, in principle, we kind of see that trickle-down economics as a principle that was foisted on the American public, which we believed in 1980. You want to get real specific about what goes wrong, because in the current regulatory environment with Supreme Court initiatives like Citizens United that have said that corporations are actually people, and that you've got all this dark money that's essentially buying politicians and candidates. It's a really, really toxic soup environment. It's a really toxic environment for democracy, fairness, equality of opportunity, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, my question was, mapping back to my question, I'm throwing this out here to you guys so we get a little participation maybe in the chat, is your read on TikTok as a platform the same as mine? Or are you guys not even doing the TikTok thing? Because I've become quite enamored of it. I think as a platform, it truly hits the sweet spot. Okay. So I'll throw that out there. You guys can answer or not. Meanwhile, I'm going to listen to Golik again.
I may have been a tad harsh.
Okay. So between this line and this line,
Help.
2, 3. We got about 3 seconds. All right. So that means that whatever Golik does next needs to happen around frame 20-ish. We'll say 19. Okay. Right. And what I want to do here, I think I'm just going to draw a dot and so kind of force myself to create a new drawing. Now, so let me just think about this. Ultimately, let me say there's something that happens in the process of animation when I set out to do, let's call it full animation. So in other words, today's exercise is about what is Golik's acting. He's looking forward, and he's going to kind of go like this and think about what he's saying, and then he's going to say what he has to say. I want to, in the interest of full disclosure, say that in practice, whenever I've done exercises like this, what usually winds up happening is it's a really interesting exercise for learning about acting and animation. But what usually happens is once I actually get to the end of the scene, I think every time what turns out to happen is at least a third of the drawings wind up getting discarded because it turns out that the acting is better when I do less animation. And this is just always proven to be the case. I'm not necessarily identifying why. It could just be that I suck as an animator, But so, be prepared. This is, in other words, this is a scene that is more about practicing animation than necessarily sticking it into the show the way it's going to wind up being once it's done. Hope that kind of sort of makes sense. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of block in his clothes, and then what I want to do is think about, did Valerie just walk behind me? I thought I saw her. What Golik's next expression should be. Okay, so now comments. I'm not doing TikTok. I can't figure out the navigation. Feels too much like an app navigation. I prefer navigating a website. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. My first experience with it was that okay. I'm getting a fair amount of freezing up here ish. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to rerun to home. Every once in a while it kind of bogs down, but if you rerun it, it starts acting performant again. So let's just do that. Anyway, yeah, so my read on TikTok initially was, OMG, this could grab your attention for an hour, and you just pissed away an hour. And that is true. You can do that. But then what happened in my case was that Valerie, oops, wrong brush. Valerie started sending me, just for my own enrichment, TikToks that she appreciated. And so the content I was watching was basically the stuff she had recommended, and that was how I got familiar with it. But as I say, in terms of the socio-cultural conversation, I guess I'll just say by way of endorsement here, hey, Inio-san, I'll say that for me, TikTok has become the definitive place to really get a bead on the socio-cultural conversation, the things that are really concerning people. And a lot of it, I gotta say, informationally, it's vastly superior. Completely the opposite of what the common perception is. And the reason is that because people do restitching on misinformation or bad information, it's actually amazingly easy to get the straight story on different things that are happening. But more importantly, I think the service that TikTok's providing that's massively cool is that there are things that happen in America that will never make it to the mainstream media. Again, legislative and judicial, court cases, for example, right now, if you're left-leaning, there's a lot of good news. There is a lot of good news. The right has really tipped its hand in terms of not only its agenda, but whether it is a good actor in the world. A lot of people on the left were worried for years that OMG, if these guys get in power, they're going to become fascists. And I may get in trouble on YouTube for saying the F word. I don't know if fascist is a bad word on YouTube. I have no idea. And it's been really inspired a lot of dismay for people to realize, yeah, actually that's right. That's what it turns out happens once they get in power. It's all about, really doing everything they've always accused the left of doing, intruding into your life, telling you what you can and can't do, spending, the public treasury. And so in the current climate, they've tried to do a lot of things that it turns out have not been successful because of being overturned by judges, some of course of whom were appointed by Trump, there's a lot of good news happening now. My opinion is um, that when the greatest disservice that was done to the right in recent history, and this is where, okay, so guys, take what I'm about to say as this is a pretty tight summary of where I think we're at, and then you can argue it if you disagree. And in fact, I invite people to disagree. I love it when people disagree with me. And set me straight. So, the great disservice was the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Why? Because for 40, 50 years, the rallying point on the right that has unified evangelical Christianity and the whack job far right Republicans has been the abortion issue. Once that ruling came down, the right all of a sudden was a bit lost for half a second because they instantly lost their scapegoat. They lost their rallying cry, that they've rallied around for decades. What do you do with that? And as a progressive leaning person, you go, well, here's what you would hope. You would hope that they're not going to respond to that by going, well, geez, we're in trouble now. We don't have our scapegoat anymore, so I guess we need a new one. You would hope they would be about policy. But nope. Turns out they did exactly what you were afraid they'd do, which is replace one scapegoat with another one, because that's the only way they're able to consistently, essentially, fool their followers, the followers who do not benefit from their policies, yet continue to follow them because of an ideological connection whereby many of their voters vicariously associate themselves with cult of personality individuals, not just Donald Trump. I mean, for people who, I remember my friend Donio, who was in a couple of my movies, the way he would listen to Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity all day, and he couldn't have a cogent conversation about issues except to the extent that he could quote those guys based on what he heard on the radio, right? And because of the somewhat warped ideological link between evangelical Christianity and the far right, he had to, it's like the old saying, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. What that means is, this impulse that we have to remain consistent with a position that we've taken, even though our information has been maybe completely debunked, that's a powerful, powerful force in the human enterprise. It just is. Okay, I see a big problem in his head. Look at that. Man, guys, how do I suck that bad? Well, it just goes back to what I said earlier. I am not talented. I'm just freaking tenacious. Okay, Noah Val, TikTok is definitely capable of displaying the zeitgeist of the current era. I do agree with you. It's really interesting because it feels more unrestrained than Facebook. Can you, just before I'm inclined to answer that, but will you do me a favor? Can you explain better, and by the way, this is a, this is a no-hate zone, so if anybody says anything that someone disagree with, just disagree with it. Don't flame them, right? Let's not minimize people. So, Noah Val, what I'm wondering is, what do you mean exactly by unrestrained? What does that word mean to you? Because I can't say if I agree or disagree yet. I suspect I probably agree, but I'm not sure yet. So while I'm waiting for that response, I'll say that, what I see happening, if what I feel coming off of TikTok is truly reasonably indicative of what's going on in the culture, then we are absolutely building to a tipping point. And by the way, if you look at Ron DeSantis's polling, for example, if you look at the economic fallout of his policies, because he's kind of the extreme example of what happens when a mini Trump is allowed to run rampant. Not necessarily going to be a bad thing, but we'll see what we get. And what we seem to be getting is, golly, man, people waking up to go, these stories you've told us, like I cited earlier about trickle-down economics, these stories that you've told us about what we should be afraid of today, and therefore we should vote for you so that we can enjoy this promise in the future of freedom, prosperity, whatever you want to say. That seems to be the pattern. It isn't a pattern, this is on the right that I'm talking about. It isn't a pattern of saying this is our policy choice, this is what the data shows us why this policy would be a good thing. It isn't that. It's never that. Rarely that. In fact, importantly, it was that 50 years ago. The problem was that the policy choices, like deregulation under Ronald Reagan, we've got enough history behind us to see all the things that went wrong with those policies. So I'm not even necessarily impugning Reagan. Okay? I'm not saying it was conspiratorial or even necessarily evil. I'm just saying that history showed us it was kind of stupid. That's all. And so the question today isn't to demonize Ronald Reagan, although some people do want to do that. The point is, it's like climate change. For me, you can argue about whether people are causing climate change or not. The question is, what the hell are we going to do about it? Because clearly the climate's changing, even if it's being caused by freaking sunspots. It doesn't matter what's causing it. It is a reality. So therefore, how are we going to respond to that reality together, collectively, in order to make a better world for ourselves, if in fact we can? Okay. Nillavale says, unrestrained in terms of, on Facebook, there's a lot of moderation in order to push the most and friendly content that's as neutral as possible. The same thing can really be said for YouTube, too. Okay, the difference, I think I probably do disagree. And I can say that as somebody who, what I expected to find on TikTok is precisely what you just described, but it's not what I found. In point of fact, it feels closer to the opposite. The main difference, let's just say this. On many platforms, you can buy your way to a large audience. Now, you can buy ads on TikTok, but they're clearly identified as ads, and it's pretty easy to flip past them. Okay? So in other words, for me, certainly in my experience, ads do not carry the day. In fact, they come up rarely. Okay? So what you have is this, you've got this corporate money-making monster machine that is YouTube or Google, right? They're making billions of dollars a week, maybe a day, I don't know. They're making a lot of money. Okay, so you got this machine that needs to be sustained because it's really successful, right? Okay, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with success. Nothing wrong with making money. If you follow the signal flow of incentives, then what you find is that if you have a climate where it's possible to buy your way to up in rankings or to a larger audience, then that will begin to shape the nature of the content. Okay? There's a lot more messy content. Sit on a couch with their smartphones talking to their buddies. It's a lot more okay, yeah, like silly cats jumping around and things like that. So yeah, what my experience was I saw a lot of that stuff the first couple days that I was flipping through TikTok, because to be fair, TikTok as a platform is exploring my preferences as a viewer. But what I found was within just a couple days, I was finding content that was not unrestrained at all. It was very much germane to the arenas of interest that were important to me. And what I found was the link that got me to the content that was interesting to me had to do essentially with popularity. Okay? In other words, content that has been endorsed by other people that kind of sort of think the way I do or have the preferences I have tends to make that content rise in popularity. By contrast, I emphasize the stitching capability, because the stitching capability means that if I get on TikTok and start propagating a bunch of bullshit, it is very, very quickly folded into other people's content where they're going to set me straight. And I think that's the way it does it is, like I said, it's the sweet spot. It feels about right to me. So at a glance, someone would say that's a weakness, not a strength. In other words, the popularity contest means that you're going to be inundated with propaganda. And what I found is, to my surprise, it is literally the opposite. And it's very easy to find content that is contrary to my proclivities. Because I want to see the other point of view, that's me. And so what happens is YouTube and Facebook are like YouTube. I don't do what YouTube wants me to do. What YouTube wants me to do, number one, is create short content, first and foremost. But number two, if you look at your the way you're going to deal with hashtags, thumbnails, the cult of public opinion in terms of what is appropriate content as moderated by the platform, what I find is that the vibe is that if you really play by the rules, then you can craft a successful channel, say on YouTube. Whereas on TikTok, it isn't about playing by TikTok's rules. It's by having good content that people resonate with and go, yeah, I want other people to hear this, right? That's the difference. It turns out, and psychology supports this view, okay, and I can't cite the exact studies here, but we know if we throw 30 people into a room and then we present a problem and a solution to the problem is to be arrived at by this group, you find that the consensus-based reasonings and decision makings of a large group turn out to usually arrive at the better answer. As opposed to, think about what the opposite of that is, and this is what the right would have us accept today, is that no, the science isn't the answer, data's not the answer, a clinical, honest look at what's going on in the culture isn't the answer. No, the answer is trust me as some sort of higher authority who knows more than you, I'm smarter than you, I'm better educated than you, and so therefore you should trust me. Therefore, give me your vote and trust that the policies I try to enact will then favor you. And then what we have is decade after decade of being disappointed at finding how we were sucked into that, and it didn't work. It turns out it was a lie, right? It turns out that, no, one individual who's got a religious paradigm, for one thing, that's inundated with magical thinking, it doesn't mean that they're wrong necessarily. It just means that they probably are. And when you have that dynamic behind you for enough years, you start to wake up and go, wow, it seems like maybe something's wrong here. Now, here, by the way, I'm doing a tween. What I'm going to do for this tween, I don't know if this will work. I'm going to try it. I'm going to hit the selection tool, and I'm just going to flip his head. And Tahoma 2D just blew up. Okay, that's disappointing because, well, the good news is I've been blabbing. Why is that good news? Well, it's good news because I have Tahoma set to auto-save every 5 minutes. And when people talk about misogyny and religion and racism and all this white supremacy, all this stuff that they're saying, and a lot of them are saying on TikTok, is so baked into our culture that it's manifesting all the time and we don't even realize it. And you hear that and you go, oh, come on, and that's not me. Is kind of, and by the way, Maria, you can see that it actually even preserved the frame that I just created, so I'm in good shape. All right, so I'm going to hit the S key and try this again and see if it blows up again. Flip. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I just want to see how this feels, so I'm going to change my start marker to here. Okay, and we need a little bit of a hang on the end. Okay, not bad. Now what I want to do is examine what changed in his body, because obviously as an animator this is something I am notorious at. One could say that I suck in this regard, and I do. Okay, what's going on here? I'm on the wrong brush. No wonder it wouldn't erase. Okay, so I'm going to try to do a couple little fixies here. I want to round his cheek, or his jawline a little bit more. So yeah, my point was that there seems to be a vibe percolating up right now in the culture of people waking up to the idea that we have strictures in place that sort of define how our culture works. A common one, just to, like, what the hell are you talking about? Like the divide between the 1% and, people, and the difficulty people are having in paying their rent or buying a home these days. Things like that. Especially among Gen Z. Gen Z is extremely left-leaning, like 70%. And we're probably on the precipice of a blue wave next year. But of course, maybe not, Okay, let's see how this plays. Okay, so the interesting thing about this goes back to what I said about doing a bunch of drawings and then finding out you didn't need to. If I take this drawing where all I did was flip his head and I duplicate it, and now let's kind of emulate what I did in the other next drawing with this one. So his head isn't as shifted into a different position as much. Oops, I guess I wanted to hit erase. Okay, we got comment. Funnily enough, we've also seen that millennials haven't gone right-wing as they've gotten older, as was predicted in the early 2000s. Yeah, and that may be or may not be indicative of the awakening I'm talking about. I mean, people who are esoterically minded, or astrologically minded, people who put a certain amount of weight on the passage of the year 2012, stuff like that. People that are into astrology are pretty bullish on the idea that Earth and, in particular Western culture is going through a major shift right now, where the way we've been doing it for the last 100, 120, 150 years has, capitalism basically, has outlived its ability to continue to hold sway. And I think generally they're correct. It's pretty much an economic problem. Okay. When you have this divide between rich and poor, then what you get is a situation where the only way the system can sustain itself is to continue to grow. And now the way we've been growing is by having, on an individual basis and on a national basis, we keep borrowing money to fund a loan-based economic model, which puts everybody in tremendous debt. And when the actual cost of living in total reaches a point where that debt-based approach is no longer sustainable, what do you do? Where do you go from there? Now, my contention is this. What we have to do is we have to, the idea of redistribution is not a dirty word. Socialism is not a dirty word, because what we want to do is we want to grow not by growing in size, but growing in quality. What we want to be doing culturally right now, economically, socially, is grow in quality. Quality of outcomes, quality of wages, quality of products, improve quality. Grow that way. Churn. In other words, it's a churning machine where we take what we have in terms of resources, which notably includes people, and build into them. That's why the most important policy priority today at all levels should be education. Children should learn how the world works. They should understand how to start a corporation, for example. That's not hard. It's not hard. It's easy. Costs you like less than $100 in most states. And there's some real tax advantages. Why don't we teach kids this in high school? But we don't. Okay, so one thing we would want to do to make this work. So yeah, I think that sums up my position today quite nicely, is we have to continue, we've got to grow, but we have to grow in quality, not volume, not quantity. The idea of exploiting the living shit out of the land, and we'll just deal with the the outcomes later. We're running out of time and space in which to do that. The exploitation model kind of worked for a while, but it's outlived its usefulness, right? So why is this such a scary proposition? Well, what you would expect those who have benefited from exploitation to do in response to these realities is to offer you a philosophical proposition about the future that's based on recapturing what was amazing about the past. It's exactly what we see happening on the right today. It's always about the good old days. So we think about how counterintuitive this is to the human experience. This is where it gets into what's dear to me in terms of understanding emotional health. What the Republicans are doing politically is they're saying, don't look at now. Don't look at this. Don't look at what's here. Look at the past for a static model of how things should be. Give us your vote, and then we promise you'll have an experience in the future that emulates this static model that's unchanging about the way things should be. This is specifically why it is pasted over with all these layers of magical thinking and religion, and it's why there's a conflation between the right and evangelical Christianity, which is why I'm not an evangelical Christian anymore. I can't tolerate the duplicity and the outright lies that the participants in these groups must engage in 24/7 just to make it all make sense. I can't buy it anymore, right? Correct. Marketing, financial planning. We don't teach. If we teach children, for example, about the value of cooperation, we do some of it. I'm not saying we don't, but when you think about cooperation and collectivism, thinking like a woman, frankly, some of the greatest revolutions in my mind in the last 6 months have been finally becoming a person who can love, meaning I have enough empathy to truly understand my partner's psycho-emotional experience. This is a whole long story I'm not going to get into today, but I'm at this point I'm convinced until very recently in my life I actually did not know how to love. But that's, like I said, that's a whole nother discussion. It's a really interesting one, at least to me. My opinion is that, by contrast, the left would have us say, no, stop. Don't tell me your mythology about the past. Don't tell me your empty promise about what's going to accrue to me in the future. I don't believe you anymore. Instead, let's look clinically at what's really happening here, now. This. Let's deal with this. And when you deal with this, one of the things that's part of this that you have to deal with is the fact that the culture is changing. I mean, the mythology of the Great Replacement is basically bullshit, but absolutely it's a more eclectic, colorful culture, is it not? That's not a bad thing. That's a very, 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 very good thing. You know, diversity is a good thing. That doesn't mean that, for example, affirmative action programs that have as their goal enforced diversity are a completely good thing. I'm not arguing that they are necessarily a good thing. They have flaws. The recent Supreme Court decision notwithstanding, you can argue about whether that was a good decision or not. I don't think it was, but, you know, that's just opinion. But when you have a wholesale awakening of a population that's going, you know, we don't believe the stories you're telling us anymore, and all the evidence is piling up right outside my door, and it's affecting my wallet. You know, if I had to predict, the only way that America avoids a blue wave in 2024 is essentially if the Republicans do a complete about-face and begin to propagate very moderate policy ideas. The problem is, at this point, who's going to believe them? And plus, as Valerie said, probably it can't happen because Donald Trump's still at the helm. As long as Donald Trump is still at the helm, it would be quite difficult for the Republican Party to do sort of an about-face at this point in history. So my question to you guys is, what do you guys think about this stuff? Maybe you don't think about it at all, you know? That's a legitimate answer for sure. Okay, so, boom. Okay, I don't like what I did, so I'm going to get rid of that. Actually, Control-Shift-X doesn't work. I guess I have to just delete it. Okay, so let's look at this. Okay, yeah, so these should probably run closer together like I had them in the first place. You know, what we're basically looking at is whether we've got a choppiness factor here that is sufficiently egregious. What am I talking about? If we speed this up to 12 frames per second, you'll probably find that it feels better. Yeah, see? And if we extend this, this is actually why I would tell people, feel free to animate at 12 frames per second, or obviously you can do 24 too, but because you get away with murder. At 8 frames per second, the eye has time to be more judicious about the transitions it will accept. As long as these are 1 frame apart, it's basically probably okay. So we're good. Yeah, so anyway, if nobody sort of weighs in on the questions on offer, then I'll take that as mainly a signal that you really, it's not what you particularly care about or want to talk about. And that's fine. I can totally respect that. All right. Let's listen to Golik's line of dialogue again.
Help.
So actually we'll put it here.
I may have been a tad harsh. It's been a trying day.
Okay, so this is definitely going to be tricky. Okay, this is too long, so let's just move this north, and we'll only give it a second after all, it turns out. Okay, now, I'm going to go ahead and make the dubious choice of baking some lip sync into the pencil test. I think what we'll say is his head's moving around. Once he stabilizes it, probably make more sense to put the mouth in its own layer. I have nothing specific to say about much of what you've been talking about, but as a foreigner, it's interesting to see some of the political happenings in your country. You know, the thing that's interesting, Darren, is from the research that Val's been sharing with me, yeah, there are parallels for sure between the U.S. and the UK. Statistically, Americans I don't know. I can't cite where the polling is coming from or whatever, but basically, statistically, on top of the fact that our medical costs are some of the highest in the world, our medical outcomes are some of the worst, just barely above third world countries statistically. Things like that. There's a lot of things like that that are true, that are kind of like seem sick, right? Illness throughout the culture. And yet, Americans are among the dumbest people on the planet. We are some of the least educated, like almost, maybe I'm wrong in terms of, I might be exaggerating this, but it's like you could go to any foreign country and they will know more about American history than we do. We have embraced ignorance to such a degree in this country that it drives people that are scientifically minded, to distraction. It gives them the willies. Okay, so he's going to say, so let's just stop there and do a D. I'm just going to go ahead and be liberal here with the, just keeping it all in one layer as a pencil test. Okay, because I'm just trying to let the acting unfold. Hey, let's see here. Is anybody new here? We got Chizyapo. But Chiz has been around for a while. Noel Val's been around for a while. We got Maria. We got Darren. And the thing says we got 6 people, so there's 2 people that haven't weighed in to acknowledge their own presence here. All right, let us see. Okay, that's not bad. This is not bad. All right. This is too short of a break. I'm sorry. I said the opposite. Dyslexia moment. It was too long of a break. Okay. So now what I want to do is, this is where we're going to get into a little body language. Okay, right there. I'm just going to, boom. Sorry. Draw a new drawing. This is going to be tricky. Probably, golly, I don't even want to include the onion skins. So what I want, let's do this. What I want to do is try to make this useful for you by telling you guys what it is I intend to do, what I'm trying to accomplish, and then we'll see if I succeed. Okay? So the idea, let me watch this one more time. So he's going to say I may have misspoken. So what do we want to do here? I'm going to just toggle between this and this. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a sense of the size of his head here. And what I want to do is have Golik kind of shift weight a little bit. And I'm going to keep this really loose because I want to be able to focus on the acting at this point. All right. And I'm going to put a big smiley face right here, because my proposition is that he is going to couch his response in feigned diplomacy, if you will. Okay, so I'm feeling a little bit of a lean. Okay, and so I'm just scribbling here, and it feels right. So I'm going to say, what if his arms actually came out? Almost in a welcoming gesture, okay? Don't know if that's quite appropriate for Golik, but let's run with it. Let's just kind of see how it feels. All right, save our work. Okay, so he says, I may have misspoken. Okay, so on spoken, I'm really going overboard here on the what I'm trying to accomplish acting wise. Okay, sorry about that. I pushed the wrong button. So I want to go. I want to have him. Again, I'm way overacting here probably. But let's just try it. Okay, so I'm going to have his hands go behind his back now. So he is the perennial diplomat. He's the guy who bowls you over with all kinds of sweetnesses while he reaches in your back pocket and takes everything you own. I mean, that's Gulick, right? So I'm going to create an expression like this. To just convey the idea of what we're trying to accomplish here. Okay. I hope this is fairly clear. I may have misspoken. Okay. This is a big change. Okay. We're getting into Disney territory in the sense that if you want to make this work, you're going to have to draw a lot of keyframes. This is a legitimate approach, and this is a legitimate approach. This feels like this is resonating wrong to me, so I'm just going to actually hit the old E key and delete it. I'm going to try again. Okay? It was too big of a change. Just didn't feel realistic. And I don't want to create, 12 keyframes trying to get me from here to there. Okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw you've seen it in your Disney animation, The Illusion of Life. You've seen it in the Animator's Workbook by Richard Williams. You've seen it, frankly, I think in Ed Hook's book, Acting for Animators. The center line. Here's his center line. Let's look at the center line. What can we do with the center line that gets us where we want to be? Let's just animate the center line. Okay, so from here to here. Okay. So it's kind of a similar thing, but now the arms merely fall. Okay, they don't go behind his back. All right. And in this pose, he should be he's pushing in. He's pushing in towards Salud. And so I suppose his eyes should be up here. All right, let's just give this a try. I may have misspoken. It still feels too extreme to me. It's really interesting to me how that works. This works and this works, sort of. But as a flow, it doesn't work. Okay. Now I have to say, as an animator, this experience jibes with most of what I've learned over the years, which is that less is more. Yeah, this again, it's an interesting pose, but it doesn't quite feel right. So what do we do from here to here? I'm going to say the safe course of action is probably to simply have him perk up a bit. So I'm going to... All right, let's just get that. Let's look at how that flows. Man. Okay, that kind of works. Darn it. I keep hitting the wrong key. Okay, so we're just going to toggle between these two. And we want to really have less of a change. I guess, for me, pose to pose is sort of feeling like it works better for what I'm trying to do. So we've got a slight arc out here, so let's assume that that's going to continue, but this is going to push out even a little more. Okay, so if we're going to have him sort of stiffen a bit, it would only be about that much. What time is it? 12:19, streaming for an hour and 14 minutes. Okay, now, being able to review this objectively is a little corrupted by the fact that it doesn't drag out long enough, so we don't get the feel for letting it breathe. So we got, okay, so yeah, we definitely need a tween here, so let's just put one in. Let's just go boom, and let's put a key on both sides, and let's keep this as simple as possible. I'm just gonna I just want to feel the motion. Yeah, not bad, not bad. That'll probably work. Okay. Yeah, honestly, this pose isn't working. Everything I do seems to not be working, whereas this tween into this pose seems to feel good. Broom, broom, broom. And once he lands there, he needs to say his dialogue. Right? Well, these are the problems you run into. You just deal with them. So, again, we're just going to go pose to pose here, friends. Oh yeah, this actually needs to be more straight on, doesn't it? All we have to do is just get the positionings right, and we're probably going to be okay. I know I'm breathing into the mic. Sorry, guys. Actually, this happens to me a lot when I'm doing really intense creative work, like working on a painting. I get in a zone and I start. It's pretty intense, actually. A lot of fun. Save our work. Yeah, because we could do a lot with his facial expression on this pose. You know, just leave him in this pose and then deal with his facial expression. And then from a storytelling standpoint, it's probably going to feel more appropriate if we cut to salute anyway, get a reaction shot. That's a classic way to make your editing and storytelling process more economical. You're not dependent on that one magical, really long, complex shot. You use your cuts to just keep things flowing. Okay, I think that's it for now. I'm going to take a break. So thanks for coming out. I may be back later today, but probably not. And then we'll probably pick up on this, and when I come back again, we'll probably have a more finished shot. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Thanks everybody for visiting and for the feedback. And as you know, there will be more later.